Well, I think a good place to start is, some of our listeners are going to be familiar with what biblical theology is. Some may think that everybody and, their mom or brother has a definition of biblical theology. So,
That's true.
how would you define what biblical theology is?
You're right. Different people use the term in different ways. I guess I'm just thinking of it as part of what we do when we're interpreting any passage. So there's a number of things that we do, of course, and we'll mention them in a moment. But whenever we approach any particular passage, we're wanting to think about where it is in the timeline of Scripture. And so that's really the name that I think biblical theology attaches to that idea. You're thinking through, where does this passage fit in the unfolding plan of God? And so, yeah, so I think we have an understanding then that everything in the Bible is connected, not sort of a random collection of disconnected texts thrown together, but there is an unfolding plan. And so, yeah, so that in a nutshell, I guess that's my idea of biblical theology is we're thinking through whereabouts is it on the timeline, but not just whereabouts it is, but how does this section fit into what came before and what's going to come after? How does it relate to this overall unfolding plan? That's probably too much to say there,
Yeah.
but that's the
Yeah.
gist.
No, that's good because I think, next we probably want to, think about how does it relate to other interpretive approaches, right? So think about
Mm,
exegesis,
yeah,
systematic theology, historical, practical theology, those type of things. What makes and I think that probably the most important, distinction, though I think they should always be wed, they're not opposed to each other, would be, biblical theology versus a systematic theology, right?
yeah, that's right. So we do all three things really, ideally, when we're approaching any passage in the Bible. And depending on your listeners and where they're up to in, studying the Bible and all these sort of things, what they're familiar with, some of these terms are probably very familiar to them and some may not be. But the word exegesis, that's just the word we use for drawing out of the text what's there. We're not the opposite of that is sometimes called eisegesis. So you're reading
Yeah.
into, you're putting into it what you want to be there or what you'd like to see there. But exegesis is getting out. What is the text saying to us? And then, as we mentioned, biblical theology is that idea we're placing that. Then whereabouts is it in the unfolding plan of God? What comes before? What comes after? It's not just a disconnected text. And systematic theology, I think, is we're relating that text to what other texts say on the topic as well, more broadly. And so, you're reading a passage about Jesus's humanity, another passage about Jesus' deity. How do those two fit together? So you're always thinking about that as well whenever we're coming to a passage of the Bible. I guess we should say as well, we're not the first people to have thought about these things or approached
Yeah.
the scripture in these things. And so historical theology is another category that I would maybe fit under the category of systematic theology, thinking of these texts and doctrines and things have been hashed out in creeds and confessions and things throughout church history. So we're not just islands. But in all of those things, I would probably say that exegesis then would have the priority because none of us approaches a text without what we think, the Bible teaches about God or,
Yeah.
about humanity or something like that. So although it sounds like it's a straight line from exegesis, the text, to where is it in the timeline of biblical theology, to how does that relate to other texts, systematic theology, and kind of then systematics is like the culminating thing of all of them.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's on a timeline, but there's a sense in which that they all mix together because we
Yeah.
come to any
Yeah.
text with a picture of who God is in our mind. So we want to be careful then that our exegesis, I think, is having the priority. That should affect and shape our understanding of biblical theology and systematic theology.